Folks, it's my coach used to say it's go-to time. It's go time now.
Welcome to the Kyle Olson Show. I'm so honored to be joined today by Laura Trump, so we're going to get right to it. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee issued a report this week alleging all kinds of corruption involving the Biden family and specifically Hunter Biden. One of the most shocking allegations was that Hunter Biden received a $3.5 million wire transfer from the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Laura, what would the response be if Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. were accused of similar things?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Great to be on with you. It's so laughable to see how the mainstream media has sort of just kind of bypassed this whole thing. If any member of the Trump family had not just received a wire transfer, but taken $2 from the wife of the former mayor of Moscow, believe me, it would be headline news. It would be splashed across the front pages of every major newspaper. I imagine they would have breaking news on every television station to discuss it. The reality is what they put, especially my brother-in-law, Don Jr., through with the number of times that he had to go testify on Capitol Hill over a meeting that had there was nothing wrong with the meeting that he had. It's so absurd to see what actually has now transpired as we understand it based on testimony given, in the Senate. This is crazy stuff, and it's such a double standard, I think, that exists out there, and I hope people see it. I'll tell you, our family feels it. It feels so incredibly unfair that these sort of things can be done by somebody with a certain last name, and they go completely unannounced by certain media outlets. And then, the allegations that are non-existent against the president, against people in our family, they're front page news. But really shocking stuff to see come out about Hunter Biden. But I think we all knew that there was something kind of strange going on there. I mean, the fact that we knew already he flew over to China on Air Force Two and got $1.5 billion from the Bank of China was bad enough. The rest of this stuff is sort of mind-boggling.
Well, and let's stay on that report for a second. So contrast for me the announcement this week of the Attorney General and Ivanka Trump providing an additional $100 million towards anti-trafficking work. But then in this same Senate report, there was an allegation that Hunter Biden is linked to an alleged, quote, prostitution and trafficking ring.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any different, does it? You have the Trump administration working hard to combat human trafficking by adding additional money. I mean, this is huge. People don't hear, I think, Kyle, enough about human trafficking and what a big issue it really is in the United States of America, around the world, and to see that this administration is tackling it head on, is making so much progress, so much headway, and then to think that this is a possibility that Hunter Biden actually paid into something like this to promote it. I'm almost speechless. I almost don't know what to say. And look, let's make sure that we aren't accusing somebody of something before before all the facts are out. But the reality is just the mere allegation of this is really shocking. And I don't know. I don't know how people can call themselves journalists and constantly lie about our family, constantly attack all of us for things that none of us have done. And by the way, have you heard a lot about that $100 million towards human trafficking from the Trump administration? No, you haven't, because the media doesn't report on that. You likely don't hear a lot about the Hunter Biden allegation. Report on that. They love to find anything negative when it comes to the Trump family, but they're going to brush this one under the rug when it comes to Biden.
Right, and the whole human trafficking issue, I know that this has been a big focus of the administration. They've held conferences. There's been other sums of money have been given towards this, so it's a major focus. But let's turn to Michigan. The Big Ten football season is finally starting. You're in Iowa today. Obviously, they have a Big Ten football season that they want to get going. What impact will the president's work there have on the election?
Well, and I don't want to upset anybody, but I'm a Purdue fan because my dad played football at Purdue back in the day. So I love
That's
Big
not
Ten
good.
football. I'm a huge fan of college football, especially Big Ten. And look, this is a step towards normalcy. This is a step towards bringing our country back. I mean, the idea that everything is canceled. You just heard the other day that now they're canceling New Year's Eve in New York City, the first time in 114 years that this has happened. We've got to get back to some normalcy, and I think people are yearning for that. And to be able to have something that is a pastime that we all look forward to in this country, Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter your political views. We can all come together and appreciate college football. I mean, I think that's great. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's something that people really need to start feeling like we're heading back towards normalcy again. You know, you see, especially in Michigan, the way your governor there has wanted to keep things locked down and had not wanted people to go back to their normal way of life. The president has been strongly saying, let's get businesses back open, let's get kids back in school, let's bring back college football. So I think this is huge. I think people really appreciate the stance that he took on this, and I, for one, am very excited we're going to have college football back.
Well, and of course, now the fight coming up will be Halloween and whether or not kids can trick or treat. That's going to be a fight in Michigan. I know the mayor of Los Angeles has said kids can't trick or treat, so that's going to be the next fight. But how are things looking in Michigan? There's a new Trafalgar Group poll out Thursday showing President Trump with a narrow 0.7% lead. But what are you seeing in Michigan? What messages are resonating with Michigan voters?
Well, you know, in 2016, Hillary Clinton thought she had Michigan in the bag because it's been a blue state for so long. And Donald Trump said, no, the people of Michigan have been done wrong for so long by the leaders in our country. And I'm going to go there and tell them that I'll bring the jobs back, that they are no longer forgotten and left behind. So I'll tell you something. People really took that to heart. They voted for President Trump in 2016 in Michigan, and they have seen the results of a Trump presidency. When you look at things like the USMCA that went into effect in July. You know, you talk about bringing manufacturing jobs back to this country, leveling the playing field with trade with China, with our, you know, the USMCA, of course, Canada and Mexico are our direct neighbors. This is very beneficial to states, especially like Michigan, and I think that it's really resonated with people. And you know what? I got to tell you something. Every time I'm either in Michigan or I talk to someone in Michigan, all they tell me about is how many Trump signs they see, the Trump vote parades that they see. I mean, these vote parades, by the way, are totally organic. We don't put those on from the Trump campaign, but we're feeling very good in Michigan. But look, we want to work for every single vote. We take nothing for granted. As people saw in 2016, the president was out constantly on the road working to earn people's votes. That's what we're going to do now. In 20 game every second like we're behind until we win on November 3rd. So you'll see a lot of us in Michigan. We feel really good in the state, but look, we got to make sure people are getting registered to vote. They're going to get out on Election Day on November 3rd, vote for Donald Trump, but vote red all the way down the ticket. We need to make sure we maintain the Senate. We need to make sure that we take back the House. Really important stuff on November 3rd.
So my colleague John Binder at Breitbart News recently wrote that Hunter Biden helped a Chinese firm buy out a Michigan automotive company to create jobs elsewhere, not in Michigan. What should Michiganders be worried, or should Michiganders be worried about their jobs in a Biden administration?
Oh, my gosh. Well, we should be worried about a lot of things, especially our jobs, especially when Joe Biden himself says they're not bad folks. So come on, man. I mean, this guy has such a cozy relationship with China, and whether you're talking about him personally, whether you're talking about with his family, this was a man that has been in politics for 47 years, and yet you see under his leadership how detrimental it really was for the United States of America, signing things like NAFTA, which sent our jobs overseas, took manufacturing jobs out of the United States and sent them elsewhere. That is not the kind of leadership we want in the United States. That is not the kind of leadership you want in Michigan. I can guarantee you that. You have Donald Trump, on the other hand, who the jobs, if you remember, that Barack Obama and Joe Biden said you'd have to have a magic wand to bring back. I guess the president had it because he's brought them back in the manufacturing sector by the hundreds of thousands. And look, as we come out of this COVID pandemic, We want to know that we have somebody in the White House who understands the economy. There is only one of these two men who's given America the greatest economy in the history of our country, and it's President Donald Trump. He did it once. He's going to do it again. He's looking out for everybody's jobs all across the country, including in Michigan. You've seen that in the past 4 months, we've added 10.6 million new jobs to this economy. So even though things are not 100% back to normal, the president is working overtime to get things back to normal. And I can tell you something, I think people can very clearly see how terrifying a Joe Biden administration would be, because look, not only are you talking about China, but look at what he wants to do with the Green New Deal, eliminating energy jobs overnight. We are now energy independent and an energy exporter as a country. That is huge, and that is it's monumental. That would be reversed overnight. The energy jobs across the country, that would be lost. Absolutely terrifying. He wants to obviously raise our taxes for 82% of the population. It's horrifying to think of, but that is why I'm out every single day fighting all across this country to reelect President Trump. It's not just about the next 4 years. It's about the next several generations and making sure this country stays on the right path, and it's great for our future. So that's something I hope everybody keeps in mind as they head to the voting booth.
So we're just about out of time, and I know you need to go, but the debates are finally starting next week. How do you think they're going to go? What should viewers be looking for?
Well, look, the bar has been set so low for Joe Biden. My gosh, if this guy doesn't totally fall asleep on stage, basically they're going to say he won, right?
Right.
Because nobody has really any expectation. That said, look, he's been in politics for almost 5 decades. He's done this many, many times. He, at one time, I know, was a very good debater. He's had certainly plenty of time in the basement to be studying up, so I expect he'll do okay. But I think the major problem he's going to have is that his policies are going to be on full display for the American people to compare and contrast with Donald Trump. And we've seen what Donald Trump has actually been able to do for America. Joe Biden, of course, is promising to implement socialism in this country. And there's a lot that we still don't know about his policies. We don't know about his plans. If you remember, the DNC was just a depressing, dark, dismal view of America. They think we should all be ashamed to be Americans. You didn't get a real outlook as to expect in a Biden administration, but he's going to have to talk about that on stage alongside the president, who I will argue is one of the greatest presidents America has ever known, has done things that people said were impossible to do. He's rebuilt and revitalized our military. He is literally creating peace in the Middle East, given us the greatest economy in the history of the country, lowest unemployment. Joe Biden doesn't have a lot to point to on that front. So I think the policy is going to be a problem for Joe Biden. I can't wait to tune in. Get your popcorn ready, folks.
Are they allowing teleprompters at the debate?
Well, for Joe Biden's sake, I hope.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But Laura Trump, thanks so much for your time today. This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Conservatives have been losing the war in our media, our schools, and entertainment for years. And now, of course, social media companies are silencing voices that are contrary to their progressive agenda. But some conservatives are creating solutions. Antonio Sabato Jr. is leading an effort to create a film studio for projects reflecting classic American values, unlike what comes out of Hollywood today. He joins me now. So, Antonio, first, tell me your vision for this.
My vision is to leave entertainment to entertainment, whatever there may be. And for us, there's a lot of people in this country, Americans, patriots, who love this nation. And they want to keep making movies about this country. They want to keep making movies about our law enforcement, our military, and political things, maybe historical, whatever it may be. But I'm patriotic, and so is a lot of other people. And we take pride in our country. So movies have always been part of this nation from the beginning of, since the beginning of movie making, really, in this country. And we want to keep it going. And we're proud Americans. And there's a lot of people who feel that they can't really be themselves in Hollywood anymore. They can't wear their Christian crosses if they may choose to do that, or maybe their political reason might be different. But, we used to be in a place where we used to be able to discuss and talk about things. I used to live in Hollywood. I live in Florida right now, but Listen, back in the 80s and 90s, it was a different story. You could have discussions about political things. It wasn't always the best discussions, but at least you can walk away as friends. But right now, there's this evil about everything else that the fake media and everything else on the far left is trying to spill. And they've gotten a lot of people, whether they're paying them or whatever the propaganda is, they know what they're doing. And they're creating a lot of chaos in this nation that didn't need it to be created. After all, we've been going through a lot of other stuff, right? With the epidemic and everything else. So, but I want to keep Hollywood intact and patriotic. And that's why I started the studio. That's why I'm raising as much money as I can to keep making pictures that support, like I said, our law enforcement, our flag, and our military, so much more. So that's what we're fighting for.
What do you see as the potential for this effort?
Well, we have to come together. I hear a lot of Christians wanting to go to the next level. They're taking our churches away. They're taking our Bibles away. They're taking away of speech, in every way, really. And right now we have to come together. The church has to do more. Christians have to do more. Patriots have to do more. There's a lot of people in California who are running for political seats, and they're all left alone. Nobody's helping them. There's a lot of liberal states that, because of the situation, because they're so run down by the liberals and the far left Democrats, that they don't even want to donate any money. They don't want to even support these candidates. And if we don't win the Congress, if we don't win the House, the House and the Senate and everything else that we need to do, I'm sorry to say, these people on the far left, they're going to keep going far left, and they're going to get to a place with no return, which I think we're already there now.
This is something I've never understood. There's a huge market of conservative consumers who will watch, buy, recommend conservative content. It seems like an obvious business opportunity to me, and yet Hollywood will not make content for us. Why do you think that is?
Well, they hate God. They hate rules. They hate any guidance, if you think about it. Talk about, helping the world, and liberals are always the first one to step out and say, let's donate, let's get money involved, let's help every country in the world. But look at their neighborhoods, look at their homeless situation, look at the addiction, drug addiction, and everything else that's been going on in this country. In one way they say, oh, let's help everybody else, but let's forget about our own people. And Hollywood, for some reason, in the beginning, if you look in the 40s and 50s, the presidents of these studios, they were patriotic.
Mm-hmm.
They loved our country. They made movies about our country, and they loved our flag, and they took pride in saying, you know what, I'm an American. Warner Brothers, Universal, all these studios in the beginning of time, they used to be a lot different. They used to support our country. Now they don't. And you ask me why they don't, is because, like I said, there's been this thing about changing the rule of law, changing the way this country stands above everybody else in the world. Because if it wasn't for the United States and the help that this country has done for everyone, the world would be a much worse place, right? So they want to control. They want to control the distribution of movies. They want to control the content of the films. They want to be peace, love, and everybody else. But if I love my country, if I love our officers who are risking their lives every single day, I want to make movies about that. I can't do it. They won't allow me to do it anymore. So that's where we have to come together, and we have to, you got to call me up. You got to get together with me, because this is happening right now, and we're going to make it happen, because you have no idea how many people I have been contacted from makeup artists and electricians and carpenters and actors and producers and executives. You name it, all across the board of the entertainment world, saying, we want to come work for you. We heard about what you're doing. We're sick of this. I can't come to work. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's crazy.
When did this shift in Hollywood happen?
It's always been going on. I think Obama years, it really got into a whole different ball game, and then it gotten worse from that point on. And then we have a president now who's fighting the fight, who's telling the left, who's telling the snakes and all this evil to the left. He's telling them to their face, I know who you are, and I'm going to tell the American people who you are. And now they know. And that's what they're fighting with: lies. They fight back with aggression and breaking and burning and stealing and all that other stuff, because they can't deal with the truth. And the truth hurts. And this guy, our president, I believe he was put there by the Lord upstairs and said, listen, you might not be a perfect politician, but the American people don't need a perfect politician. They need an American citizen who's proud of this country and says, enough is enough. And we need to put it back on to number one. That's what he's been doing.
Now, it's one thing to finance and produce conservative projects, but it's another thing to get them distributed. How are you addressing that?
Well, it's funny enough, right now we're in a good place. The distribution companies are needing of content. So right now they have no choice by working with me. So because they need content. And at the end of the day, if you give them something that is good, produced right, directed and well acted in and everything else, well, take a chance at it. The only problem is that a lot of the Christian films, base Christian films, have been done to a particular audience or a particular network in this particular box. Instead of making an entertainment film that might have content about Jesus Christ, that might have content about, police, whatever it may be, but we don't want to put it in these, Christian films are Christian, but a regular film is a regular film. I don't believe that. I think there's a message in every single film you make. And if you put it, and there's a place for those films in the Christian world. But what I want to do is I want to make films about Christianity, about my faith, about Jesus, about so many other things in that world. I also want to make films about, like I said, about our Navy SEALs. I have great stories and great characters and people that I've known in the military that have great content. Westerns like Trailblazers, which I'm producing and directing now. So I'm sick of waiting for Hollywood to stop this nonsense. So I started my own thing.
So what's your biggest need and how can people get involved?
Well, the biggest need is the right partner. I have people offering money, giving us, options, we'll give you this much money. We'll take this back in return and all that. That was done back in the day, contracts and business contracts and all that stuff, which we're going to do. But I work in a different way. I like to work with the men upstairs. I'm more of a spiritual kind of, how can you help? You can help by contacting me on Instagram, which is the easiest way. Just send me a message there. If you're really serious and you have the money and you want to invest, because this is an investment. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
An investment in a business. Conflict Studios, which is conservative studios, will be there to protect the future of entertainment for conservative people, for people that are not willing to say, oh, you got to be in this box. I was asked the other day if a Democrat with different beliefs that I have wants to work for me. I'm like, yeah, come work for us. We're making entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make entertainment, and we want to make entertainment that it's appropriate and it's protected for the American people, for patriots, and ultimately for the best for our country.
Antonio Sabato Jr., thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much. God bless.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. A documentary came out last year chronicling the disturbing battle that is playing out on campuses across the country where, at least in leftist minds, words equal violence. The director of that documentary, titled No Safe Spaces, is Justin Folk, and he joins me now. So, Justin, what are the origins of this movement where words equal violence and can be met with physical violence?
Well, Kyle, a disturbing trend started on campus a number of years ago, and it's been building ever since. And it's this idea that if I disagree with you, you don't get to speak. And it first started on college campuses. That's where we first, saw it taking place in the most, real terms, in the most dangerous ways. Whether it was at UC Berkeley or a number of other campuses, if somebody would come to campus with ideas that some of these students didn't share, they would attempt to shut them down. And unfortunately, that idea, that notion of you don't get to speak, we as a mob decide, has proliferated into the rest of society. And here we are today with this problem that began on campuses but is now everywhere. And everybody's at threat here. I mean, whether you're a place of work, whether no matter who you are, it can come for you. And that's what the movie No Safe Spaces talks about. Unfortunately, the film is becoming more and more relevant by the day.
But what is the root of that? I mean, you say it started in Berkeley. Was it a professor? Was it a student group? What's sort of the root of that mentality?
Well, I think part of it has to do with the fact that liberals, older liberals, the people that believed in freedom of speech, the right to freedom of expression, the right that you may not agree with me, but I still support your right to speak. That got supplanted by the new left. When the new left and the old liberals didn't do enough to stand up against this. And you see it all over the place. You see, even at the New York Times, for example, recently, older liberals that used to be in the editorial department are now stepping down because they've given way to this new leftist totalitarian idea that we are right, and anybody that's against us is evil, essentially. This started on campuses a number of years ago, and the liberal professors and administrations did nothing to quell it, or at least nothing to explain that, hey, we need to tolerate different opinions. And as it ran its course, and these students, these leftist students that believe this, have gone off from their campuses, and they now hold positions at tech companies and in editorial departments around the nation and the media, and they've brought that idea with them that we are the righteous mob, and if you don't agree with this, you don't have a right to speak. So I believe that this was taught or allowed to be taught on these campuses a number of years ago, and now we're seeing the fruits of that.
Interesting. So why do these academics think they need to protect students who are adults from different ideas?
I don't know, because it doesn't do them any good. It doesn't strengthen them for the long term. And in our film, we actually have some liberals in our movie that talk about this. Van Jones, for example, he is not a conservative, but he warns about this exact thing. And he says, hey, listen, specifically to liberals, you need to be challenged. You need other ideas to push you so that you're stronger in your own ideas. And so I don't know why this sort of coddling mentality or the coddling approach was employed by administrations and professors. I don't know why they chose to go down this route, but ultimately it's a dangerous route, and it leads to weaker individuals, and it leads to less discussion, and ultimately it leads to not even being able to solve problems or discuss ideas. So I don't know why professors and administrations went this route. Maybe they didn't want to offend the students. Technically, the students there are their customers. It became, campuses have changed over the years, where it's more of a customer relationship instead of, hey, we're going to teach you. We're going to have an open marketplace for ideas. It became about serving the students' wishes. So maybe that's a glimpse of why this occurred. But in any case, like I said, it's dangerous, and it's come to the rest of America.
Well, and that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, where you have students in Berkeley, et cetera, sort of marinated in that whole belief. And if someone has an alternative opinion to them, well, then that person is racist, or they're fascist, or they're a Nazi, or they're sexist, or whatever it is. And then suddenly those individuals are in a corporate setting, and they're bringing that mindset to that corporate setting, whether it's a social media company or it's a one of these major organizations where suddenly you've got individuals walking out and they're protesting and about corporate rules or whatever it may be. Is there a way to sort of unwind that and say, no, that's not the way we should be doing things? And is that, how exactly do you do that?
Well, I certainly hope we can unwind it because it's crucial for a free society to be able to openly talk about ideas. I think one of the best assets that we have is our comedians. And actually, it's the comedians that have been the first ones to push back on this idea because it affects their job. I mean, if they can't tell jokes, if they can't speak truth where they see it, there's a lot of truth in comedy, and sometimes there's a lot of uncomfortable truth. But you've noticed that this movement is incredibly humorless. And if I think we have any hope, it's that people will get tired of this humorless, outraged mentality that's just constantly outraged, constantly calling somebody a bigot or a racist just because they have a joke, just because they have a different point of view. I hope people grow tired of that. It's humorless. It's undemocratic. And thank God for the comedians who are speaking out about this. Guys like Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Adam Carolla, who are pointing out that if you can't tell jokes, democracy dies, ideas die. And so I hope people grow tired of this humorless leftist ideology of you're a racist, you're a bigot, we don't like your ideas, shut up, go away. And they can't take a joke anymore. There's
a very funny Seinfeld episode. It was one of I think it was probably episode or season 5 or 4 maybe, the handicap spot. And they make jokes about, handicapped drivers and all of that kind of thing. They could never make that today. NBC would never allow that to air. It's interesting. Is that What sort of fight are you seeing amongst those comedians? And do you think the Dave Chappelles or the Jerry Seinfelds or the Adam Carollas, are they able to sort of shift and move the needle when it comes to that, or are they sort of an outlier today?
I think they're able to move the needle better than anybody, comedians, because we love our comedians. We love to laugh. We love to be entertained. And when we lose that, when we realize that we've lost it, I think that's when people are going to be really upset. You can have your politicians and your people in the media ringing the gong all day long about this topic, but it isn't until Dave Chappelle or Jerry Seinfeld says, "I'm done going to college campuses. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done telling jokes." And we're going to realize, just like you mentioned, all the great comedy and all the great art that was made before can't be made today. And instead, we're going to get this regurgitated, politically correct tripe that is going to be the same thing over and over and over. Virtue signaling. This is the right way. If you don't agree with this, then you are evil. You are bad. And it's going to make for bad art. It's going to make for bad entertainment. It's going to make for just no laughter, no fun. And I hope people will grow tired of that.
What was the reaction to your movie, No Safe Spaces?
Well, we had a great reaction. On Rotten Tomatoes, we have a 99% audience rating, it was the highest for any film in 2019. So the people that see the movie love the movie. Now, the critic review was about half and half, as can be expected. But there were a lot of liberal critics that were able to admit, hey, this is a good and important film. So we were really pleased with the reaction to the movie. We just hope more Americans get to see it.
How can they see it?
Well, it's available on several home entertainment platforms right now. It's on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, a number of others, and the DVD is available as well. So people can watch it at home, and people can share it with their friends. So if they really want to find all the different places, they can go to nosafespaces.com, and there's links there to take you to the different platforms to watch the film.
Great. Well, Justin Folt, director of No Safe Spaces, nosafespaces.com. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. I'm joined now by Giulio Terzi, former Italian foreign minister and ambassador to France, Israel, and the United States. Now, Ambassador, I'm not asking you to wade into U.S. domestic politics, but as you know, we have a presidential election that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Joe Biden has claimed that Donald Trump has hurt America's standing in the world and our allies don't trust us anymore. Would you say that's accurate?
Listen, Kyle, it's a great pleasure to talk to you, to talk with your guests and people who are listening. As an Italian, I have profound respect for the institution of the presidency of the United States, an elected, very important institution, which is a beacon of freedom and democracy all over the world. And I think that is difficult for a foreigner, especially for somebody who has had a number of experiences and so many contacts and acquaintances in the American system, to jump into the political debate. But what I would like to underline is the fact that this American presidency has obtained remarkable results and gained a lot of respect on issues which are of fundamental national interest for my country and for the Europeans. And I would like to mention, first of all, the situation with China, how to manage a very difficult relation with this enormous country, enormous power that exists in Asia and that is always more aggressive and assertive vis-a-vis Europe and vis-a-vis the United States. But also about Iran. It is an extremely important issue. It is sometimes misunderstood by the Europeans and even by the Italian government on certain instances, but on which the American administration has marked in security terms, in terms of defense of stability, peace, and freedom in the Middle East, and especially to counter the threat against Israel, but against also a number of Sunni Arab countries in the Gulf, and not only the Gulf, but also in the Mediterranean. So I think that the achievements which are made with the latest start of new relations, a new partnership between the United Arab Emirates, the Bahrain, and in perspective also Oman and Saudi Arabia, and we're talking also about Sudan. These have been very impressive achievements obtained by this administration. And I think they go in line with European and Italian interests. So from my point of view, there are a number of things which must be in any case recognized, which may have a relevance whatever is the future of the American politics.
So President Trump's Iran strategy has been maximum pressure. Do you think that strategy is working, and how is that different from the Obama administration's strategy?
People are saying that the Obama administration strategy, and unfortunately still the European Union strategy, is not a strategy of maximum pressure, but is a strategy of maximum appeasement, which is exactly the opposite of maximum pressure. I believe that I'm a strong believer that the Europeans should change its approach and to become more understanding what are the real ground of the American concerns, how the threat the Iranians and all its proxies are posing for the rest of the world, and especially in the region. And the sooner, the better the European is that the Europeans should change their policy. The Europeans should applaud American leadership in the Security Council when the Americans have tried to propose the entering into force of all the UN sanctions and to practice to implement the legally called snapback mechanism. This administration, I believe, should be fully supported by its allies in this endeavor, because it is very evident it's aiming at a safer Middle East by countering an Iranian regime which is nothing else than a terrorist, warmongering, and criminal organization. Why the snapback mechanism, as I said, to impose all the UN sanctions is going to enter into force, and it's going to be very effective. Let's not fool ourselves. This solution may be legally contested and questionable in certain quarter, but I believe there is also an extremely good legal and political ground for the American administration to reimpose all these sanctions, because the Iranian regime has violated the nuclear agreement. The nuclear agreement was already a very, very weak and soft agreement, a very soft program, which was established 5 years ago. But in any case, even that agreement was severely violated in a number of instances. Just to make an example, the enrichment of uranium fissile material has increased 10 times more than what American plans of the nuclear agreement. So that is just an example. We have had also the serial violation of the agreement, the resolutions of the United Nations concerning a ban to missile proliferation with nuclear capacity, and the Iranians did violated them constantly. So there are many reasons why it's very easy to understand how this sanction mechanism has to come back. It has to come back also because it is something that is desperately needed by the Iranian population. The Iranian population, the NCRI, those who belong, the millions of people in Iran belong to the movement of the Iranian resistance, Sunni Arab country in countering the regime. That the Western countries counter and don't have the regime, that on the contrary, that impose pressure. That is really the interest of all the opponents, all the political opponents who have been jailed by the thousands and they've been hanged and tortured and they're suffering in an incredible way. And the West must help them also being serious in dealing with the threat.
So speaking of the NCRI, you recently participated in a conference for a free Iran hosted by the National Council of Resistance of Iran. What would a free Iran mean to the region, but also the rest of the world?
Free Iran would mean an enormous achievement. First of all, it would get along the real expectation of the population, the Iranian population. There have not been free and fair elections since the inception of this tyranny in Iran. They have suffered 40, in any case, 41 years of theocratic dictatorship. They are being repressed over the last 2 years, just to mention the recent developments. Over the last 2 years, there have been thousands of demonstrations, requests, appeals, and also clashes even with the security forces. And there are 13,000 political prisoners in jail. And you know very well, terrible stories like the very famous Iranian wrestler who was hanged after having been tortured for more than 50 days. And he has been killed and murdered, but many others are in the death row at present. They are all political prisoners. And there has been, coming back in history, there has been a terrible massacre in 1988, which is a genocide. Now there is a trial, prosecution in Switzerland, which is considering the fact that the assassination of a former Iranian ambassador in the year 2001, was connected to the massacre on 1988. And that is a global picture, which is a terrifying state of affairs. Well, the Iranians want to get out of it in any possible way. All these issues were discussed in depth in the conference. This conference was online, but there was a huge participation of more than 10,000 people connected through the different internet platform. And that just gives me also the opportunity to mention one of the conferences which was still in presence 2 years ago in Villepinte, when we had an attendance close to 100,000 people. And the Iranian intelligence, Iranian MOIS, organized through an Iranian diplomat based in Vienna, organized a huge terrorist attack. Huge terrorist attack, which was diffused only thanks to the intervention of some security services, but just a few hours before it could have taken place. And there was personally there. I was in Villepinte to not criticize the Trump administration, with a large Italian delegation of politicians, intellectuals, experts of Middle East. We were more than 30, 40 people on stage, and we gave as many other delegations, we gave speeches. We did risk our life in that situation. The reaction was extremely strong in certain European countries. Unfortunately, in others, like in mine, was soft because nobody wants to annoy too much the Iranian authorities. But there is no doubt that we must become serious. We must start a deterrence policy, which is the only one to try to prevent and diffuse these kind of threats, which have become political refugees in European countries, have been killed by the dozens by Iranian agents. And now the threat is increasing. You see the threats which has been directly launched against President Trump and against the American ambassador in South Africa. These are an unspeakable gesture and threats. The international community must become much more serious.
Mm.
And sanction specifically for this reason, and they wonder if an economic blockade of Iran should not be a need message to the country, to the regime, certain point.
So there, you touched on this, but there's a trial coming up in November for Iranian diplomat Asadullah Assadi. Excuse me. He's accused of plotting to. Yes, he's accused of plotting to bomb an opposition group holding an event in Paris in 2018, which you just said that you had attended. What is the significance of that trial?
It is an extremely important trial because, as I mentioned, the terrorist attack that was planned by the Iranian intelligence was state terrorism. Was state terrorism like in many other occasions, and that attack would have killed and maimed and injured thousands of people because it was in a huge hall with 100,000 persons. So you can imagine the disaster that would have been. The evidence against Assadi was so strong that over the last 2 years, there has been an enormous amount of pressure by the Iranian government, sending the foreign minister all over the place, sending his voice, and taking any opportunity to try to blackmail the Western government, especially the justice, Belgian, German, Austrian judiciary, which were involved since the beginning of this investigation. They were trying to blackmail this government to try to have back Assadi, who was an operative, in fact, was a member of the diplomatic corps, but just as a screen. In fact, he was a Moïse operative. And there is no doubt that there is a large network of Iranian embassies and institutions, cultural centers, associations in Europe and elsewhere, which are whose main business is supporting terror activities, not only radicalization, because generally we are talking about the radical component of the Islamic fundamentalists who operate abroad. Here is a specifically terrorist activity, and therefore we have to conclude. If you want to talk about deterrence, we have to, first of all, whenever there is some doubt that a diplomat is a part of a terrorist network, it must be sent back immediately or either arrested if there is enough evidence, or sent back immediately to his country. But also the embassies, which are used as platforms for this kind of activity, should be immediately closed. I wouldn't say forever, but at least right, strong signal at the political level, diplomatic level, to close this operation. We cannot pretend that nothing happens just to appease the mullahs and to try to to buy their oil, to continue business as usual. That is not possible anymore. It's never been possible in the past, but especially now is crazy.
Ambassador Giulio Terzi, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Kyle. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me today. For more of my work, go to Breitbart.com or find me on Twitter, Kyle Olson 4. Use the same handle for Parler, Kyle Olson 4, KYLE OLSON and the number 4. This is the Kyle Olson Show.